Hi, friends. Thank you for taking time out of your week to spend a little with me. I appreciate you. This week, I'm discussing a case from Elle who asked me to cover the tragic murder of Stephanie Hummer. So, as always, I ask you to join me as we remember Stephanie. Stephanie Hummer was born on August 4th, 1975, in Cincinnati, Ohio, to parents Dan and Susan Hummer. The eldest of three children, Stephanie was said to be very self-confident. She was outgoing, bubbly, and made friends easily. She loved meeting new people and was down to earth. She was always willing to lend a hand if someone needed it. Stephanie grew up in Finneytown, Ohio, where she attended Finneytown High School. Stephanie was not only an athlete, but the editor for the school yearbook. She was involved in many extracurriculars and worked at a nearby golf course as a caddy in the afternoons and on the weekends. Her hard work in her position paid off when she was awarded a full-ride scholarship through the Evans Scholar Foundation. The Evans Scholar awards golf caddies scholarships which cover their tuition and housing expenses. Stephanie was accepted at The Ohio State University, where she planned to major in landscape architecture. After graduation day in 1993, Stephanie left home and headed for college. She had high expectations for her future and a very positive outlook of what was to come. Stephanie took on college with a breeze, making new friends and keeping in contact with her old ones. During spring break vacation in 1994, Stephanie's childhood best friends came to town to spend the break with her. All three girls stayed at her dorm and planned to spend the week in Columbus. On March 6, 1994, Stephanie was invited to a party by some male acquaintances. Her friends agreed to attend so they could let loose and have a great time. The group arrived at the fraternity house and mingled with the host before Stephanie decided she was actually pretty tired and ready to go back to her dorm. She insisted her friends stay and enjoy themselves. She felt capable of walking the straight shot from the party back to her dorm. Stephanie was seen around 3 a.m. walking in the direction of Pearl Alley, an area near the campus. When her friends returned back to Stephanie's dorm room, they realized she'd never made it back. Stephanie's friends notified police of their missing friend. Her disappearance was treated as an abduction since she was gone without a trace. There was nothing to imply that Stephanie would want to abandon her life. Police organized a search using any available resources to help locate the missing girl. Teams of volunteers from the nearby neighborhoods banded together to search the city, but despite their best efforts, she was nowhere to be found. Her parents were contacted shortly after the initial missing persons report was filed. They made their way to Columbus hoping their daughter would be located. The Hummers were worried because it was very unlike their daughter to not come home, especially since her friends were visiting. But as the hours continued to pass, they started to fear the worst. 10 hours after Stephanie disappeared, a body was discovered. Miles from the campus, in the thick brush near the train tracks, a railroad worker noticed the deceased body of a female who was mostly unclothed. Police were called to the scene, where they noted the victim appeared to suffer from an injury to the back of her head. A bruise was also present on the side of her neck. The victim was only dressed in tennis shoes and socks, and her bra was around her neck. Due to the state of the body, it was believed the crime was sexual in nature. The victim appeared to be in her early 20s and was wearing jewelry. A description of the decedent was provided, and police felt they'd found Stephanie. The body was sent to the county morgue, where her parents were asked to come in and identify the body. They verified the victim was indeed their daughter. An autopsy was performed, and her cause of death was revealed as blunt force trauma with a heavy object. Foreign DNA was recovered, which did not match any known samples in the database. The crime scene itself didn't deliver much information. No weapon was recovered, and the nearby brush was trampled over, where a path to a nearby road was discovered. Police believed this road was where the killer may have parked their vehicle. Based on the interviews with her friends and where her body was discovered, police believe Stephanie was abducted from Pearl Alley, then taken to the scene of the crime where an assault took place. There were no eyewitnesses near Pearl Alley. No buildings or homes were present near the crime scene. Without much to go off of, they turned to question her friends. Her closest friends claimed Stephanie was a breath of fresh air, and as far as they knew, she had no enemies. Everyone seemed to like her. Stephanie was new to the city, so they didn't have a clue of anyone who would want to cause her harm. The male acquaintances from the night of the party were also questioned, where they denied any involvement with her murder, stating the last time they saw Stephanie was when she left the party. The boys willingly submitted DNA tests to compare to the sample found on Stephanie, and neither were a match. Just a week into the investigation, police had no viable suspects, and her case hit a dead end. Stephanie's funeral was packed. Classmates from all over attended to pay their respects to the girl they described as everyone's best friend. The church jammed from wall to wall with people who were affected by Stephanie at some point in their life, which included her entire graduating class. None of them could understand why this happened to Stephanie. The news of her murder struck the campus with fear. This prompted the university president and city mayor to work together to implement recommendations put in place by the campus task force. Some of these included creating a partnership between the university, the city, and neighborhoods nearby. New street lighting systems and patrols were conducted by both Columbus Police, University Police, and the Community Crime Patrol. They hoped working with the local community would bring a trusted relationship to help keep the area safe for those living near and on campus. To gain more leads into Stephanie's murder, the Columbus Police Department partnered with several law enforcement agencies, including the FBI. A tip line was set up where initially a lot of calls came in. Several of the calls indicated seeing a white van roaming the campus area the night of her murder. However, they were all too generic to actually follow. A reward of $16,000 was offered, but no one collected. Despite hundreds of people being questioned and ruled out through DNA, police were no closer to a suspect. Over the years, several people came to the attention of investigators. A man called police claiming he had a lead into Stephanie's murder. While visiting with an old friend who he identified as Anton Carrion, he claimed the two were swapping stories when he brought up Stephanie. Anton claimed he was at the campus that night and he killed the student. At first, he didn't believe his friend, but then the next day, Anton reiterated he murdered Stephanie, even providing details of the scene. Police asked the caller if he could get his confession on tape the next time they spoke. Luckily, he was able to record the conversation where Anton again confessed to the crime. Anton was brought in for questioning, where initially he denied it, but then admitted he did say it, but it was just a joke. It turned out Anton watched the media diligently and collected every bit of information he could, and what he didn't know, he just guessed at. He claimed he was able to provide such accurate descriptions of the crime scene because he made frequent visits to the area. Anton's DNA was tested and not a match, so he was let go as a suspect. Another tip that was taken into consideration came in 1995 from an inmate at the Pickaway prison. This man stated during his GED class, another inmate, Frank Zayden, stated he murdered Stephanie. He hit her in the head with a brick and left her in a field next to a tower. Police couldn't believe it and asked if he could get the confession in writing. Frank had a record for sex-related crimes, and at the time of her murder, he was on parole for an unrelated kidnapping and assault charge. The original caller was able to provide a written confession by Frank, but police felt the letter was too vague to build a case against him. Frank was interviewed at the prison, and during the interview, he denied knowing anything about the murder. But when they revealed his letter, his demeanor quickly switched. Frank admitted the story was not his, but the original caller. The man who turned Frank in hatched a plan for the two of them, believing they could make money if they could get the case turned into a movie. The first step of the plan was having a fall guy, and Frank agreed to help. Both men's DNA was tested against the known sample, and once again, they didn't have a match. The last prominent suspect investigated was a man named Rodney Hastings. Rodney's name came up during a look into known offenders in the area with a similar MO. Rodney had a record for both kidnapping and attempted abductions near the campus. In one instance, he was arrested and convicted of kidnapping, where he was sentenced to 10 years but only served 2. They discovered Rodney worked for a transportation company, which was located close to where the body was discovered. Not only was the location suspicious, but when they learned the company had a fleet of white vans, they took it more seriously. Known acquaintances of Rodney were questioned, where they claimed he often bragged about a game he'd play with the girls near campus. While in the company van, he would go to the area and stop girls, where he claimed to be an officer. He would demand they come over and get a pat down from head to toe. He found joy in feeling on unsuspecting victims. His friends claimed other nights he used the vans for sexual exploits, where he would hire company for the evening. They discovered his coworker, who was also his ex-girlfriend, wanted nothing to do with him. After questioning her, they learned she ended the relationship due to his criminal past. She also lived in the same building as Stephanie, although the two did not know each other. Although the circumstantial evidence was mounting, they had no physical evidence to charge him with the crime, so a search warrant was served. They searched his van, where handcuffs, a flashlight, and a stolen handgun were recovered. It was swabbed for blood and fingerprints, but nothing was found connected to Stephanie. He was questioned and refused to give his DNA or a polygraph test, but a warrant for his DNA was granted. The DNA swab excluded him as the murderer, and the case was back to square one. For years, the pain of Stephanie's murder grew as her family continued to work to keep her case alive and in the media. Police followed many dead ends until they finally got a break. On January 17, 2006, the detective on the case got a hit from CODIS. A DNA match between Stephanie's crime and a suspect were made. The man, Jonathan Gravely, was an unknown name. A Columbus local, Jonathan attended Whetstone High School, where at the time he was a star athlete. His previous record included no violent crimes. At the time of Stephanie's murder, he was 24 years old and the father of 2 young children. His only infraction was due to child support. In 2004, Jonathan was detained on a felony charge for failure to make child support payments. He was ordered to pay $377 a month for his 2 children. Jonathan pleaded guilty to 1 count and was ordered to pay more than $21,000 in back support to his children. He was placed on probation for 5 years. In 2005, Ohio passed a bill that required all convicted felons to provide a DNA sample. Since Jonathan was now a felon, his probation officer was able to get a swab. Then, just 5 weeks later, he matched to Stephanie's unresolved case. On January 18, 2006, Jonathan was taken in for questioning. He was asked about how he and Stephanie met. Jonathan claimed the two met at a local bar where they hit it off. They left together that night and had relations, but Jonathan had a girlfriend at the time. He stated that Stephanie threatened to tell his girlfriend about them, and he just blacked out with anger. Police knew this confession was a lie. When faced with the evidence and testimony from her friends, Jonathan recanted his statement and eventually confessed to the murder. Shortly after his interrogation, Jonathan was arrested on charges of assault, kidnapping, and aggravated murder. At his first appearance, the judge gave him a $1 billion bond, and his trial date was set. Prosecution wanted to secure a sentence, so a plea bargain was offered. In exchange for a guilty plea, the charge of assault would be dropped and the death penalty would not be an option. On September 20, 2007, Jonathan pleaded guilty to the charges of aggravated murder and kidnapping. He was given a sentence of 25 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole. After sentencing, Jonathan stated he had remorse for killing Stephanie, but wouldn't provide a reason for why he did it. He claimed he had not lived a life of crime, but what he did on that day was inexcusable, and he wanted to apologize to the Hummer family. Jonathan sought a sentence overturned in April of 2023, but his appeal was denied. He will be eligible to apply for parole in 2033. He is currently behind bars in the Warren Correctional Institution. Stephanie's family was stunned by the news of Jonathan's arrest. They thought the day would never come. They thought the sentencing was a good step, but it was not closure. They stated they would never get actual justice because they cannot have Stephanie back. The Hummer family plans to attend every hearing Jonathan has to ensure he continues to stay behind bars. In 2002, a park located along North Bend Road was dedicated in memory of Stephanie Hummer. Stephanie was laid to rest at the Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hi friends, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, so leave them below and we can chat about this case. If you found this to be informative, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more from me. And lastly, if you're not subscribed yet, you should, because we would love to have you under the ash tree. Thank you again for all of your kindness and support. It does mean the world to me, and I hope you all have a great week ahead of you. But for now, we must part ways. So stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends.